Welcome back to my channel. It's been a few days and I've got an editing project that I'm going to be posting tomorrow that I've worked a couple days on. And so I hope everybody had a great Father's Day. My name is Sunny. If you haven't been to my channel before, I hope that you feel right at home here with us. And make sure that you scroll down and leave some comments and let me know how you enjoyed your stay with us. Okay, so today is Monday, and Mondays mean story time. Last week we had the freaky story, and that was really fun to share with you. Today I'm sharing a story that came from further back in my young adult life. It was about 76, I believe. And we had been away from the mainland for a couple of years, and we were going to fly in to Ohio to visit my in-laws, and it's a nice big family. We were going to have a great fun holiday, which we did have a wonderful Christmas. But about the second morning that I woke up, my husband was still sleeping. Of course, Ohio at Christmas time is very cold, and having lived in Hawaii for a couple years, it was very cozy to be under the warm blankets and yet be able to sense the cold air on the other side of the windows. I sat up in bed because I didn't want to wake my husband up yet, and I just propped the pillows up behind my back. And I was just in a really relaxed state of mind, and I was looking at all the way around the room. I just was letting my eyes kind of go like that and just observe my surroundings, because my mother-in-law had changed out all of the furniture since we had been gone. And she had some beautiful, beautiful hand-carved dresser and all of the things that went with the bedroom set back in those days. The way we furnished our homes was a lot different than they are now. And I was sitting there just relaxed. It was amazing. The smell that was coming underneath our door was the fresh brewed coffee, and I could smell the bacon that she was frying up in the kitchen. She was already hard at work. And so, as I relaxed there and was just looking around and admiring the handiwork of the craftsman that had made the dresser, unbeknownst to me, all of a sudden something happened, and I found myself not in that room anymore. All of a sudden, I was zooming towards something. I wasn't sure what. And the next thing I know, in an oval shape, above this big yellow, golden white spherical ball of light. And right above it was an oval. And in that oval was my face. And it just made me, and I thought, I remember thinking, that means, this is telling me that that ball of light, that's me. And then, it's like as soon as I had that realization, I was in that ball of light and no longer looking at it, but looking out of it. And then the next thing I know instantaneously is I was filled with joy. I was filled with excitement and happiness. It felt so perfect. It was breathtaking, and it was hard to put into words sometimes, because the joy is just, you feel so loved and so free. In this garden, and it had rolling hills, and it was very green. It was very, very bright sunlight there. Um, there was a lot of trees that having been in Hawaii for a while, whenever I would tell the story, I'd say, you know, it's like haole kind trees, meaning it's the kind of trees that you have in the mainland, maybe apple trees, or the ones that when we were children we would draw at elementary school with big round bunches of leaves like that. So at any rate, I was giggling and laughing. I felt like I was about 3 or 4 years old. I was that free from all kinds of everything. I was just free. And I was pulling the leaves. I was hovering about maybe 8-10 feet off the ground in the trees. And I I remember thinking to myself, we couldn't do this on Earth. How is this possible? And I was pulling the leaves apart, and I didn't know at that point in time actually who I was hollering at, but I was saying, look at me, look at me, can you see what I'm doing, peekaboo? And then I would go and hide in another batch of leaves and do the same thing, and I was laughing, and then realized that it was Jesus that I was talking to, and in a very fatherly voice he was chuckling and saying, yes, I see you. And I was looking around, and first of all I saw there was one ginormous mountain in the distance. It was kind of on the right hand side from where I was, and from the mountain there was like this big well, actually I wouldn't say big like Mississippi. I would say a medium-sized river, but not a creek. And it kind of snaked down and came down towards the left side of where I was. Lots of trees. I didn't notice at that point in time any animals or insects, butterflies, birds. But that's not to say they weren't there. It's just that that wasn't my focal point. While this was happening, I felt like there was a huge mass, maybe about this big around, of information and all kinds of stuff just flowing directly into my center part of me. And all the while I was talking to Jesus. Now, I didn't see, I may have seen his face, but when I came back, I did not bring back his face as a memory like the rest of this that I do totally remember. I'm talking to him, and the rainbow, for one thing, the rainbow that was in the sky was incredible. It was pastel colors, and yet there was a vibrancy to them that I don't know how it can be both intense and yet pastel colors. I don't know how that can be, but it was. And furthermore, there were colors in the rainbow that we don't have here on Earth. And I was thinking that too. I was thinking, what colors could be combined to make these colors? And it's just, I don't know. I can't tell you, well, if you mix a little bit of this one and a little bit of that color, you should hit on the color that, it's like colors that we don't have here on Earth. And yeah, so anyhow, I was just playing in that garden and laughing, and you felt so accepted. And I remember saying to Jesus, is everybody welcome here? And he says, yes, everyone. His voice is so soft and so gentle and yet strong and so peaceful. And I remember thinking in my own little humanness, and of course you don't talk with your mouth, you just think your thoughts and you hear each other just as if you're hearing with the ears, which also reminds me of my vision. I have to say, at that point in time on earth, in my everyday life, I amazed the doctors. I had such great vision with my eyes. Now, when I was at this place, one thing that I thought to myself is, wow, I can see things even more sharply than on earth. This is amazing, because there was just like a sharp, like you took sharpen on your computer and just cranked it on the picture. And just amazing, just incredible. And all the time, the joy, the feeling, I've said before, to try to describe how free I felt. Imagine when you were a child, if you lived somewhere that had really rough winters and maybe you had to stay indoors as a small kid for 4 months because it was too cold and it was too icy, it was dreary, it was dark, and then one morning you woke up and it had started to thaw and it was warm and the sun was shining and your mom said you can go out and play, and the release that you feel as you run to your swing set laughing and free to play. I'm free to play. It was that kind of feeling. And so anyhow, when he told me, yes, everyone was welcome, and in my humanness, I'm sorry, I thought, whoa, even the murderers? And he goes, yes, even the murderers. When I heard his voice, for some reason, all of a sudden it made sense. And all of a sudden I was like, of course. I'm sorry. And that's when he went, do you see those? And he lifted his arm like this. And that's when I noticed the white robe hanging off of his arm, hanging down as he gestured toward the sky. What he wanted me to see was the stars. Even though it was bright sunlight, you could see every star so clearly. So anyhow, I was talking to him about different things, and he said, it's so important not to judge people. And by that, I mean, don't judge yourself either. Forgive. Accept. Don't judge yourself. You are loved how you are. Love yourself how you are. Help other people love themselves just how they are. And I said, well, because I had only been saved maybe 2 or 3 years, and I got saved in 1972, right after I graduated high school. That's another story. When my friend Diane Norris had dragged me to the Baptist church because I hadn't been raised really with any kind of Christian doctrines. So anyhow, I knew within the short amount of time that I had been going to churches that all the churches had their own policies that they would believe in, and they wouldn't believe in other things. And I said to him, this is going to make a lot of Christians mad. And he said, he kind of chuckled a little bit, and he's like, yeah, but that doesn't make it not true. And so he said, just be concerned about living your life. He said, everything would be so much easier if everybody would just pay attention and work on their life with me and let other people work out their lives with me. And anyhow, then before I know it, he had said something about the stars, and I said, oh, I want to see. And as soon as I said, oh, I want to see, it felt like a pop. And I was there instantly. Well, silly me, feeling like a child again. I didn't even bother to look at where I was. I know that sounds silly now, but I was so taken back by the method of transportation that you just thought of someplace, and that I was like, wow. And I thought of the garden that I had been in, and pop, I was right back there. And before I know it, then I found myself back in my body. The strangest thing was, though, that at first I just was sitting there and I didn't really even remember who I was. Or by this time, you know, in retrospect, my husband was awake and he was talking to me. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know where I was. I was actually deaf. I couldn't hear. And I just sat there. He got kind of in my face and was talking to me. And little by little, I could hear. But when I first started hearing, I wasn't able to understand English, which, you know, was really strange, because when I was talking to Jesus over there, I thought I was speaking English to him and that he was speaking English to me. But the best I can understand is we must have had our own language over there, because when I started to come back into myself, I couldn't understand English for a while. And then I understood English. I could hear him, I understood English, and it kind of all hit me at the same time, that I remembered who I was, where I was, and then I just started crying. And I was really horribly sad, because the joy that I had felt over there, even though I was still happy, the same, you can't replicate it here. And I was kind of mad. I was kind of sad and mad. And it kind of lasted for a while too. Because once you're there, you're like, why would you trade it to come back here? Except, you know, I realized that God had things for me to do. I had growing and evolving to do still yet. And I had people who I guess I was supposed to tell this story to. And that's why because oh, don't worry about my dog. She's got that backwards hiccup thing that some dogs get. She's making a funny little sound. Um, okay, but at any rate, to regroup, where was I? Oh, seniors. Um, yeah, I remember thinking when I kind of calmed down, I was wondering, why was I allowed to bring back so many memories with me from that place? I mean, so many memories. And later, as I matured and got older, I realized it was because God wanted to be able to tell me at certain times to tell people. And I know we're going on 20 minutes here already, and I need to wrap it up, but I don't want to short you of the joy and the wonder. So I would say fast forward to that from 76 to, it must have been in the 90s. And I had gone to pick up my husband from work, and I got introduced to a young man that was just hired recently, and he was dating the daughter of the guy that was at that time the parts manager and stuff. And so I had met him, got introduced to him, and it was just him and I, and we were just talking story and small kind stuff, where he, had been and stuff. And before I knew what happened, I heard my voice, and it was almost like somebody else was telling the story. And I was telling him the story in very, very great detail, perhaps even more detail than what I told you here now. And he started crying. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, why on earth am I telling him this story? This is so odd. I've only known him 5 minutes. And just to break out into this story. Well, he starts crying, and I heard a small, still voice of the Lord inside my heart just whisper, just relax and keep telling him the story. So I obeyed, and I just kept sharing the story with him, and he kept sobbing and sobbing. And finally I got to the end of the story, and he's wiping the tears. And this is a man in his mid-20s, I would say. A typical macho man, and he's sitting here sobbing in front of a woman he just met. And he said, "You just changed my entire life." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "A few years ago, I was in California." He said, "I was a member of a gang, and we were fighting in the streets, another gang. I got knifed 17 times, and I was bleeding out, and the EMS was rushing me to the hospital. They had all kinds of IVs, and they were pumping me full of drugs." He said, "You described in great detail exactly what I saw. Exactly." He said, "All these years I've thought that it was a hallucination. I thought maybe it was the drugs that they were giving me that made my brain react this way. I thought maybe it was because my brain was dying." But he said, "You told specific things." He said, "I saw that mountain. I saw the river coming right where you described it. I saw the rainbow with the different colors added in. How could you say these things so precisely if it wasn't a real place? There's no way." He said, for the first time in my life, I really know that this apparently is not all there is, that we do go on. He said, I never knew. I thought when we died, it was just over. End of the game. Darkness. Nothing else. He said, but there's no way. That's got to be a real place. Otherwise, you couldn't have seen the exact same thing as I saw. And I feel that I came back with such a joy. Since I had this experience, there was a couple of times in my life where my body almost died. And those times I was so peaceful. I wasn't scared. I was happy. I felt at peace. And I credit my experience because it just changes your whole life when you have something like this happen and you see what is coming. And I shared it one time spontaneously with a little lady that was sitting next to me at a bench at a mall, because that's how we roll in Hawaii. We just talk to everybody. And she hugged my neck and she goes, honey, thank you so much for sharing. She said, I always believe in God, but I have to admit that as I get closer to my own death, I was a little nervous. I was a little unsure. You make me feel so much better. Now, I'm not scared anymore. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, but please feel free to share any or all of this story with anybody that you know when you feel inspired by the Lord. Even if you don't feel that you are spiritually minded in a certain amount of way, you will know in your heart if somebody needs to hear that this is not the end, that we really truly do live on, that we really truly are loved such an enormous amount, and that we all matter, and that we all are accepted, that we all are appreciated and cherished. So I'm going to let you go, but do spread the news to anybody. You never know. Sometimes we think people with illnesses, they're going to go soon, and then we're so surprised to hear that somebody we know crossed over that was, to our understanding, very healthy and wasn't expected to go. We never know. None of us know what day. So I love you very much. I'm so sorry for being long-winded. I did leave out some stuff, and if you ever need to pick my mind, I will try to share with you. You can reach out to me on my email. At any rate, I love you very much. Please give a thumbs up if you like my story today. And also there's a subscribe button down there. If you haven't subscribed yet, would you please join our family? I would so love to make friends with you and get to know you better. And also there's a little bell on the right hand side. If you click that, then every time I upload a video, you can come watch it and see your nutty, crazy auntie in Hawaii. Anyhow, thank you for hanging in there with me during this long story. I hope you enjoyed it. Aloha!